Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. So we're here for another edition of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, the podcast, and we're trying to kind of get some different guests in that we've worked with over the course of the last 15, 16 months. And today we've got Guy Duplantier, correct?
Close enough, Dan.
Okay. With Western Contours. And Guy was an instrumental part in what we did through the course of the entire 127 campaign. And he and I were talking just previously, and I said, well, we're not going to continually talk about 127 for the rest of our lives, but it was such a monumental effort that we wanted to take advantage of, bring people in that were instrumental in the conversation about what we did and how we won. And so, Guy, I'll let you introduce yourself, and I appreciate your time and coming over to see us from Glenwood Springs.
Yeah, first and foremost, man, thank you, humbly thank you for having me on. Honored to be here. I'm just a guy.
He's just a guy.
Just a guy. So yeah, thank you. I don't know how much I can, add to what's been done. But yeah, huge opportunity here in terms of me sitting here. So I appreciate it. As Dan said, Guy Duplantier, Western Contours podcast, also one of the co-owners of Western HuntFest, Elk Bros, you name it. I got my hands dabbling in it. I'm passionate about hunting. I'm passionate about our lifestyle. Love everything about it. The people, animals on the terrain, just, being in the mountains and just love everything about it, man. So I'm full send.
You're all bought in.
I'm all bought in, man. I've been bought in for years, so it's easy.
So what's your primary life? What you do to pay your bills and stuff? You just wander aimlessly and act like you know what you're doing, or
no? I panhandle most times through the state. I sit outside of REI's with blue hair. No, I'm an executive vice president of operations for a heavy civil construction firm. Mm-hmm. I've done that for 26-ish years, 27 years. So that pays the bills, keeps Mama happy.
Yeah. So you can go play and
I can go play and she not beat on me.
Yeah.
She likes things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's primarily how I pay the bills, and with all the hunting or hunting industry endeavors, man, it's really a lot of that is passion driven. Mm-hmm. It's just something I enjoy, and it's not enough for me to set in on a hunting season. And think that I'm satisfied, right? It's part of who I am, right? Like hunting it's me, it's everything. That's why I fell, getting involved with 127 when Hal came on the scene, and getting involved with some of the early, props in California when I was there. It just made sense to me, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a hole in a lot of our roaming through what we do, if you will, not understanding the activism part of it and why it's important for hunters to be involved in the conservation aspect and the legislative aspects. And thanks to, and I'm going to give three people credit: Mike Castillo, Dan Gates, and Charles Whitwam Howell. That really is what pushed me to understand, like, hey, this stuff is coming to vote. It's, a SB and HB, and not understanding that I needed to read every page. I mean, That's really where the light came on is I forget what prop it was in California, but it was the pig proposition that Charles said, hey, everybody was for it because it was, this big bundle of joy. We can go get unlimited pig tags. Well, then you got into the fine print of this, and thank you again, Charles. It was like, this is going to tear everything down. If it has a fence around it in any way, shape, or form, they're trying to ban this under the guise of this is great for hunters. So it really shed some light on where I stood with it. It's been something that's important to me. I I didn't realize how important it should have been, right? We tend to think we're protecting this for the future, right? 5 years ago, it was easy to say that. 6 years ago, it was easy to say that. Now it's like, no, we're protecting it now. We're protecting it, for our right to do this the next 2 years, the next 3 years, God willing, at my age, the next 50, or I better not push that one.
I want to see that. Of course, I won't be here then either. So.
But yeah, it just shed some light on things, man, and it just, you don't realize it, right? And we were having that conversation earlier. There's some steam, right, from 127. And the one thing that I keep saying, and I have this conversation with folks pretty frequently is, yeah, we won, but that's not enough, right? The opposition's not going to stop. Unfortunately, we tend to right. sit back on our laurels a little bit. And, how can we keep this going? How can we keep, that fight up, that head of steam that we have and keep it rolling?
When you and I got introduced to each other, it was, I think, mostly at the Mile High Hunt Expo last year. We had talked, but there wasn't any personal interaction.
Right.
And it was mostly there, and then things were still in the preliminary stages. I mean, we were into it 7 months at that point in time for 127, but it was the first quarter of the year essentially, and that's what I tried to divide things up into what we were doing and who we were working with and how that would play out. When you found out about something in your home state, where you're living, that was so significant, what was your first, I guess, reaction to figuring out what could you do, or was it just something that was going to happen and you were going to watch it?
It's a great question, right? And I think part of it was because it was on the heels of the wolf thing. And for me, it was like, flashing red lights everywhere, right? We just got a yes vote on introducing a predator on the landscape. Now we're going to protect or offer protections to another predator. Kind of lived it, kind of seen it, right? California, in my previous life with the mountain lions and the bans on, hunting bears.
You lived out there?
Yeah.
How long?
I've been in Colorado for three and a half years now, and the rest of my life was, born and raised in Southern California.
So it's like coming from hell to what's going to be hell.
I mean, if it keeps going that way, absolutely, right? So it was just like red flashing lights, right? You can't introduce a predator to the landscape, not understand what the impact is going to be, right? They can have some hypothesis there, but you can't predict what that's going to look like. Right. Now you're going to offer more protections, pull, the mountain lion hunt away. What does that do to our ungulates? And that's where I have a dilemma, right? Because anytime a hunter starts talking, we start talking ungulates and the elk and the deer and the moose. It's very impactful to those species. At the same time, what about the other predators on the landscape, right? The lynx. That was a reintroduction. What is it going to do now with these two apex predators, running along through the landscape? What is it going to do to the smaller predators too, right? So I think for me, it was like looking at it, seeing the red lights and going, okay, holistically across the landscape, what does this look like? And that really is what caught my attention about it. And then just getting tired of losing battle after battle after battle to the opposition. And that's how it starts to feel, right? I mean, they're well-versed in what they do. Their campaigns they're superb. They're not stupid people, right? They're smart people. They know what they do. And
they've got passion for the same things that you and I have. It's just from a different perspective. Their perspective is no harvest. Our perspective is management, conservation, and harvest. But we still care about the wildlife and trying to make sure that we do things what we think is right, and then look at the science and the data. When we started this whole thing and it was brought to your attention, Did you go, oh crap, it's followed me here too on top of the other stuff? Or what?
No, it was, I need to take action. I have a platform. I can do what I can do. You know what I mean? May not have 1 million followers, but I got enough of a voice that folks listen to that it was like, hey, I just want to do my part.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever that looks like, in the big scheme of things, I just want to, if I love it, I need to protect it.
Right.
Right? And I don't know if I've ever had in my entire life felt a sense of more belonging than I'm with a group of hunters. Like I can go to a hunt expo, any one of them, right? And I just feel at home, right? And it doesn't make sense for me to look at that and just, kind of go, well, we lose, I'm not going to do anything here, right? It's like, no, I got to do something to protect this.
Did you think that it was an uphill battle beyond epic proportions, knowing what Colorado was?
It always is, though.
Yeah.
That's the part of it, right? And going back to the Antes, they're just good at what they do. They've been fighting this battle forever. They work on emotion and ideology, right? And it's captivating to society nowadays, right? I mean, that is where 98% of the people feels like they're just held into that, ideological, emotion-based, reactionary, we're going to get this done because it feels good, and it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, well, I get if you believe a thing, but you don't know about the thing you don't believe in, right? And I hate using their terminology, but the misinformation and the lies will say, it was enough for me to go, I can't just sit by. I got to help wherever I could help.
Well, you guys were instrumental in what I saw was creating a conduit or a mechanism to a different crowd, a different group that I wasn't affiliated with. I mean, that CRWM didn't have anything to do with. I laughed at some of the first events that I went to with you guys last year, and you were so gracious or generous, and I was gracious to be able to attend those. And, the Wild Sheep Foundation let us share a booth with them, so we didn't have to put up our own, and we brought the literature, and you gave us speaking time and engagement. But I remember going to the first one, and it's like there's a bunch of these tattooed, golden-skinned Thor guys running around with backpacks on, and then the hot chicks turn around and come out and do the same type of thing. And I'm like, I know I'm at home with the sportsman, but this is kind of a foreign equation to the sportsman side because, look, I'm an old grizzled guy, and here I am trying to promote the science-based side of stuff where a lot of these young people that we had dealt with last year, they didn't have a flipping clue of what we were talking about the fight. And when you started, because most of them, and I'll go backwards, most of them were like in second grade or not born when the last thing that was about initiative to take something away. 1996 on Amendment 14 to take the trapping away, 1992 on the bear hunting. A lot of them weren't even born yet. And here I am trying to tell them about the inevitable, the devil's at the door, and they're looking at me like I'm a two-headed dragon. If it hadn't been for you guys and your crowd that was supportive of this effort, it'd have been much more difficult to be able to traverse that audience, that target audience.
Yeah, and I mean that there's always been a hole there, right? I mean, you talk, especially with the influx of onset type hunters, newer hunters. I don't know that you really learn the importance. At least for me, right? I'm not a lifetime generational hunter. I started hunting when I could afford my first bow. I think I paid $250 for somebody's used 10-year-old Matthews with 6 arrows, and I didn't know anything about it. But it was something that interested me my entire life. I just didn't have the means, right? And I think that seeing and understanding that generational gap, if you will. And the importance as I gained experience, right, in hunting, and then having Western HuntFest and knowing that we have to partake, and that part of our event, right, is education. We want to educate you, so in a nutshell, you got your calling seminars and your calling comps and your pack out challenge. It's all educational aspects. Hunt task in each shot, all educational aspects. It's great for the hunt,
right?
But if the hunt doesn't exist, if we don't bring Dan Gates in, who cares, right? It's
and that's what I said to a bunch of the chapters, the banquets, and the conservation groups that I was presenting to last year. They're like, well, this isn't really our wheelhouse. We don't really lion hunt, or we don't do hounds, or we don't really trap. And I'm like, you're missing the point. When this stuff is gone, they're coming after you. And if there's not some dumb bastard like me to turn around and be in the front of the line, which one of you guys is going to do that? Because you've never been to the Capitol. You've never been to a commission meeting. You don't know the difference between a ballot or a petition or a bill. And the education side of that goes into making sure that they have value and skin in the game. Because, as I've said at the Capitol, I think it was on October 18th, once you lose it, you don't get it back.
That's it.
And for somebody that has never lost it themselves, you can't trap or you can't bear hunt. Well, that's the way they were born and brought up. So it's brainwashed into the deal that it's not anything you can get back because they never lost it. It's just something you can never do. That's the same with game wardens and stuff that you look at and they go, well, we don't have bear hunting. Yeah, but we did. And if you look at other states that are appropriately managing bears, there's a component there that if you appropriately line up the management side of it, that you can justify harvesting bears at whatever level and whatever capacity that is deemed necessary by the science. But for somebody that's never experienced the loss of and the opportunity to be able to do that,
shoulders in the air.
They just sit and look at it and go, "Oh, good. Well, we still get to do the pack 'em out challenge."
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. But for what?
Yeah. What are you packing out?
Exactly.
Right. A couple of bags of trash is about it. That kind of sums up my last season. But anywho, you talk about kind of that aspect of I don't do it, so it doesn't matter to me. That was one of the things this year that I said, well, I'm going to endeavor to do something that I've never done. Right. So I'm easiest one, right? Yep. And it fills a hole. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to trap. And I just want to experience it to appreciate it so I understand what trappers go through, right? And that's just my process. Right. But it gives me an appreciation for them on the landscape as stewards.
Because you'd never trapped it before until this year.
Oh, until this year.
Yeah.
Right. Trappers are absolutely stewards on the landscape as well, right? And it is a difficult undertaking.
But according to your previous conversation out here, you might have not become a trapper yet.
I'm definitely not a bobcat trapper, man. That animal got me pegged. Yeah, one small kitty cat girl, and she was so tiny I didn't feel good about anything but letting her go. But my point is, even if you're not doing it, you have to look at that side of the things. And if you look at most trappers, yeah, there's a ton of recreational trappers, but like you, right, that's your livelihood. Right. That's your business, right? So for me to ignore it and not offer it the same passion, and it's in the same realm, right? If I can't offer that the same passion, then what am I really doing? Right. In the big scheme of things for this lifestyle that we live, right? And it didn't make sense to me. My trapping career may be short-lived and pretty
good
pathetic.
Exercise
it's actually really fun, man, because it's like, you got 6, 7, 8 traps out on a line, and you never know what you're going to come up to, on that curve. Most times it's an empty trap, and you're replacing some lure. But nonetheless, man, it's pretty fun. It's taught me a lot, but it's given me a huge appreciation for that, for that lifestyle, and a different aspect of management. We're in the same realm. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing is if you looked at what had happened here in Colorado, and they've tried this in other states, they went after bobcat trapping first. And we beat them. We beat them at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission in 2019 and 2020. And then in 21, they came back again, but then they withdrew the petition. But when they went to the legislature, they said, we're going to up our game. Because we lost 3 times in a row on bobcats, we're going to throw in mountain lions. This will be the blow. Mm-hmm. And that was in 22, 2 years after Prop 114 on introducing wolves. And we beat them at that level. But what that did is I think it actually gave us a chance in state and the other states as well to be able to combine the efforts because first it was the trappers and it was the trappers and it was the trappers. And then all said it's the trappers and the houndsmen. And they're like, a lot of our side was like, well, wait a minute. How much more are they going to throw in on top of this stuff? You got trappers and then houndsmen. Pretty soon it's a variety of different components. And by the time that we got through 127 on this, the opposition was already including bighorn sheep trophy hunters and elk trophy hunters and mule deer trophy hunters and antelope trophy hunters. Now it's not just trappers that what it was 5 years ago that we beat. And it's not just lion hunters anymore. Now they've incorporated everything, even though 127 only was the catalyst on trapping and mountain lion hunting or hounds.
I got to think that's part of their demise, is their arrogance that they can put it all in one, right? Because what works? Divide and conquer. Mm-hmm. If you could divide us, you could beat us. Yeah. Right? So there's a little bit of, listening to you say that, there's a little bit of credit I got to give to them and a pat on the back, right? Mm-hmm. Because, look at the landscape, look at the political landscape, and look at how divided we are as a country, right, through these issues. You put us together in it. Thank you. Yeah. I never thought about it until you were saying it right now. Like, good on you. You got arrogant, you SOBs.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I made these analogies before that I've got relatives that I just as soon never spend any time with. Mm-hmm. But if you do go to a family reunion and the neighbor comes over to jack with your family, well, now you're willing to stand up for the guy that you wanted to kick the crap out of because he was on your side.
That's right.
Just like the U.S. side of it. We might be divided within the United States on a variety of different things. But if some foreign entity came here, that would unite us, just like what we saw in 2001 when the World Trade Centers fell and the Pentagon. I think sportsmen are the same way. It's like, I don't really care about this guy and those guys there and what they do, and I don't really agree with that. Wait a minute. But when they're coming after them, now we have to turn around and unite. And that goes back into, and I've said it many times, the first podcast I was on with Santino, and he got me to turn around and do a little clip, and I said, I'm a sportsman. And I'm a sportsman at bow hunts, and I'm a sportsman at traps, and I'm a sportsman at bird hunts. That reignited something that I hadn't seen in my lifetime, to where other people realized, well, I'm not just a bow hunter. Right. I like to go bird hunting. We've got a lot of opportunities to be able to capitalize off of all of that. And to do that, success breeds more success.
I think the biggest challenge, at least, looking at it, is how do we get on the offensive, right? We've been on the defensive for so long, and we, generally speaking, most outdoorsmen and women just want to do what they do, love what they do, be left alone.
Exactly.
Right? How do we keep that head of steam rolling and get on a strategic offensive path forward, so we're not stuck in the same position over and over and over, right? And I think that's one of the things over the course of the last couple decades that I've seen is, and that's where they've had some of their successes. We're always on our heels. We're always reactionary, right? And if we can keep that momentum from 127 going, man, I think we're in a really, really good position. It's just keeping the activists activated at this point.
You went to the Outdoorsman Days event last year and helped support us, and we did the game calling contest that we threw a little bit of a different flavor in on top of what you guys were doing. It was actually kind of cool. I thought
was fun.
Just because everybody was so different when what they were doing. But what did you see through the whole process? Did you see like a growing education or a growing movement? Because you were in a different crowd. But you were bringing in this conversation to that crowd, and that crowd was going to have fun, and they were participating, they were competing and stuff. You start bringing politics and doom and gloom and the great cloud over your head. Did you see where there was any backlash from anything, or they all were on board, or they were just trying to learn and get better?
I think there's a couple things there, right? People want to do the right thing for something they love, but I also believe it's in the messaging. Right. And I would, preempt Dan Gates speaking and say, hey, this is why this needs to be important to us at Western HuntFest, or, I think I did a little bit at Outdoorsman Days.
Yep.
And you would assume that those folks would already understand that. Right. And I think a lot of it is just the messaging, right? We don't want to beat you up. We don't want you to, we would love for you to donate 1,000 hours a year, $1,000 a year, but that's really not it. Do whatever you can do. But this is why you need to listen to this. Again, without listening to this, without understanding this, without being active in this, everything else is for naught. Right? You can come to Outdoorsman Days and eat 10 chuck wagon meals, and you can go to Western HuntFest and Mile High Fish and Hunt Expo and explore and gawk at the new gear and talk to all the hunting celebrities. But if you don't do this one or two things per year, guess what? You won't be doing any of that.
No.
And then you're not going to be able to take that passion and that love for being an active participant on the landscape to the next generation. And that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever done is introduce that to my, hunting and fishing to my kids, and I think it's in messaging, man. I think it's the way we present it. People stand next to you, and we've made this joke several times. I mean, when we recorded last year with the Howell Boys, and we were sitting in the booth laughing, when people hear you speak, everybody goes, ooh, man, Dan can talk. Dan's eloquent. Dan's this, Dan's that.
Dan's full of crap.
Well, but I think what happens is there's a little intimidation because there's a lack of education, right? So it's just like getting down to that level, understanding the crowd or the audience you're in front of, and presenting it in a manner to them that they can relate to right then and there, so the message that follows has a greater impact.
And what I saw too, and I mentioned to you earlier about the young people that came out, men and women alike, that they were looking for. I won't say a mentor, but they were looking for somebody that was willing to step out and act on their behalf. And they hadn't seen that before. But the kicker is, it's not so much they hadn't seen it, they hadn't had to see it before, because nobody was really trying to take anything away in this state at the level that we were trying to profess. And trying to get people on the same page for the same cause is a really big challenge when a very minute amount of the population actually engages in that specific activity or understands the severity of being able to take it away or the volatility of the landscape. You guys provided something that was remarkable because, as I said, yours was entertainment. Yours was engagement. Yours was competition. You tried to bring politics in that conversation, and you could see a lot of deaf ears until this guy actually got it. And that guy turned around and respected that guy. So now you get the buy-in from those. Pretty soon, some of those guys are coming to our events that we were doing, or they would see you at a banquet or a fundraiser. It started to get some significant traction because they figured that if I don't pay attention to what my buddy is doing, and my buddy's supporting this, maybe I'm not going to be able to turn around and continue to do what my buddy and I do both.
Right. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, right? I mean, and I don't know, maybe I show my age by saying, you know, it kind of boils down to social media, right? Is it's not popular until it appears popular, right? And that's just the sad truth across more than just this.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest lights that I saw come on across, you know, the demographic is, it doesn't need to be popular. It's just important because it's flipping important, right? And I think that's where I was pleased the most, right? It wasn't just a popularity thing, and not to say, you know, and by all means, jump on the bandwagon if that's the flavor of the month, if it helps this cause. But it really became something that people were in and behind and knew that there was true meaning in what we were doing in it.
There's very few people that after 10 months didn't know about what was happening.
Right.
For the first 8 months, there was a lot of people had no clue in the state of Colorado and other places that had no idea what anybody was talking about. And then a light bulb turned on at different levels, and people started to pay attention. And then once the campaign actually started, they felt like that they had some buy-in because they had participated in events and banquets and fundraisers and social functions prior to when they were ignorant. But then they all wanted to get engaged, and they all wanted to turn around and help on yard signs and messaging and talking to their relatives and their congregation and all the stuff that we professed. But for about 8 months, Charles and Mike and I and everybody else that was dealing with this felt like we were beating our damn head against the wall.
You were not the only one.
Yeah.
I mean, I was literally talking to folks about 127 that had no idea that the wolves were being reintroduced. I mean, I don't vote. Why? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. This, that, the other. I think we talked about that, and I think I called you because I was so set back. Like, what do you mean? Like, you don't know about the wolves. You don't know about 127. And it was, and there's a little bit of difference, right? When you live rural, right? Generally, those people are isolationist to a point, right? Really good people, but they don't have the social media interaction. I would say 70% of those people don't have Facebook or Instagram, right? And that's where a lot of it was stemming from. So starting to see some of the yard signs, you know, on the slope was nice. Roll over to Grand Junction and Cabela's, and there's a guy out, you know, handing out pamphlets and yard signs and talking to people. So that was real nice to see it. But I think just the naivety that things are going on, and maybe because I'm on social and things like that and involved with the podcast and HuntFest, maybe that's why it was so shocking to me, you know. But even after all this, you know, hey, we won 127.
What was that?
What was that? You know, I didn't vote, and I'm like, what do you mean you didn't vote? Oh, I didn't vote for anything. And I'm like, considering what was up for risk, if you will, this year, you know, in November, like, you didn't vote? No, you know, I always figured, what's the point? Yeah, right. It's fixed anyway.
And based upon the victories that we had for the election in November of 2024, and based upon the margin of victories that we had on Ordinance 309, 308, and 127, it inspires me, and that's another reason why we followed in your footsteps, and Bobby Marshall's footsteps with the podcast, to continue with a messaging effort, not just on the doom and gloom, But the overall conversation of conservation, the North American model, the politics side of it, because to your point, if you don't have the politics side of the piece of the puzzle in the puzzle, your puzzle is incomplete.
Right.
And there's no way to be able to turn around and transcend into additional victories unless you have all the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, and I think part of that is people don't understand that it's so political, right? I think a lot of us look at hunting as a God-given right. It's our right to do this. So there's this naivety that it doesn't matter because I just get to do this, right? I mean, you talk, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to embarrass him. I talked to him. I mean, this guy's been hunting since he was knee-high to a grasshopper, and that's just what it is, It just
that's what you do.
It's what I do, and there's no thought of risk of losing it because this is just ingrained in me since, again, I was knee-high to a grasshopper, right? So to see, it's turning those lights on, right? That guy, that gal, they have a ton to lose in it, right? He does not buy meat unless it's, yard bird from the store. Everything is through 5 tags. He'll know who I'm talking about now. 5, household tags that they do their damnedest to fill every year. That's how they provide for the entire family for the year. So just the lack of information, just the lack of connection, the naivety that this is at risk, they don't realize it's political, man. This is a lifestyle. How is my lifestyle political is the thought process.
They just don't want to get it because there's too much trials and tribulations and effort that goes into trying to stand up and support the fight, as opposed to I just go to a banquet or I go to a fundraiser.
Well,
I do my
part.
Fight
too.
You got to know that
you got to know there's a fight.
Exactly. And if somebody's coming to your house and wants to break into your house, the majority of us are going to turn around and say, no, you're not going to do that, and I'm going to stop you forcefully. I'm looking at the conservation community, the hunting and angling community, as you're in my house. And I'm going to do every single thing that I can turn around and deal with. Just so happens in the community, we live in a giant apartment complex to where we have to turn around and worry about infiltration from the opposition. Let me switch gears real quick. What would you think that the community could do better in preparation for what we all know is the inevitable? I mean, things like what you guys are doing, or the big guys like Cabela's and Bass Pro and Shields or whatever, how can some sort of continuity be created to where it's more acceptable to not browbeat people over it, but to continually at least talk or make people aware of it?
I think you have to be comfortable, if I'm answering this correctly, I think you have to be comfortable with having the conversation, right? So being armed to a point, right? And I think where we miss is we talk in a vacuum, right? You and I are talking and we're in a vacuum. I think we have to arm ourselves enough to go have a conversation with that middle ground person, right? Auntie Jane, who doesn't necessarily partake in hunting and doesn't understand, or, Cousin Ralph, who, is from California, right? And educate them, and let them know that this is why we do what we do. This is our lifestyle. And it doesn't have to be a political conversation. I don't think most families deal well with oppositional political conversations. But I think educating them, educating the masses is where we need to take the next step in terms of protecting and preserving what we love to do. I think that's the best conversations that we could have. I can talk to you all day about hunting and what we need to do, and you can, give me the caucus jargon all day long. But if I don't take that information and play that forward or pay that forward to a point to someone who doesn't get it at all, that's not in our vacuum, I think we miss the mark.
Well, and I think that's a good point too, because I had people that had fed back to us information that they were trying to distribute or disseminate to their relatives or their congregation, their coworkers. And so many times they said, I'm glad that the election is before Thanksgiving. And I'm like, why? Because that's when we all get together, then we would fight over stuff. But we had a chance to educate them over time, as opposed to trying to do it in what's supposed to be an enjoyable setting. Everybody gets together, they travel to see each other, and now there's this contentious discussion about hounds and trapping and mountain lions and all the other stuff. They had a chance to do it over time, and it was almost a resurgence of self-education, because when the ballot came on November 5th with the election. People had already seen 5 or 6 weeks of stuff on social media and the television and billboards and all the signage and stuff. If they hadn't had that, plus the families or the friends reaching out to them, it'd have been much more difficult. But those guys didn't want to turn around and discuss it over the family dinner table because they knew that they would probably end up not having a very good Thanksgiving.
Well, but I think part of that again is how we message it, right? I mean, as important as it is for us to message correctly in our demographic, it's 1,000-fold for those family members or friends or congregation members to hear it in a manner that is non-threatening, that is going to, for the lack of a better phrase, tickle their fancy to get them to even listen to it, right? If we go into that conversation volatile, I don't care with who it is. And for sportsmen, we always feel like we're on the defensive. Even if we are starting the conversation, right, we're going into that conversation maybe overly aggressive. People aren't going to listen to that, right? So again, I think there it goes into how we message it, how we look at that person in the face, and can I get you to see the lens, or can I get you to see it through my lens or my eyes? And if you're going to do that at the Thanksgiving table by yelling at Uncle Jim, you got a problem.
Yeah.
It's difficult, man. It's not an easy
Especially
fight.
if you're at his house.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Don't get kicked off the table with the good gravy.
Yeah.
But I think, we need to take I don't want to say softer approach. I'm the last guy that's saying anything soft to anybody. I don't shade anything, but I will have a respectful conversation to try and get you to at least to see a little, even if I don't sway you, I want you thinking about it instead of just going, do I oppose mountain lion hunting? Yes or no? Well, why do you oppose it, right? I just want enough information out there to just have you stop and pause at that box before you check it and really think about it. And I think, again, messaging, man. I can't think of a better way to get it out there, right? And the other side hits with emotion. Hit them emotionally. Yeah. This is how this impacts me. This is how it impacts my family. This is the impact to you, right? Even if they are not a consumptive user on the landscape, if they enjoy getting out on a trail, if they enjoy seeing elk and deer, right? Have that conversation, right? And some of that goes to knowing your audience, but who doesn't want to see elk when they're driving through Evergreen or up at Estes Park? You know what I mean? Like, have that conversation that way. Frame the conversation, and then just a little bit strategic on how we present it.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50-plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to SalidaGunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to MinturnAnglers.com. Well, and the thing that I tried to present to some of the younger crowd that I was fortunate enough to be affiliated with over the course of the last 15, 16 months was getting them to understand that if you're a hunter, whether you're a bow hunter or whatever, if you're a hunter, profess that what you do essentially is 365 days out of the year. It might be preparation, it might be scouting, it might be license applications, it might be shooting, it might be whatever. But what you actually get to do is probably only 5 to 30 days, and very seldom does anybody take advantage of a 30-day season for archery. Because they can't. I mean, they have to work. They got to get vacation time. We spend more time in preparing for our endeavors than we actually do engaging in our endeavors. But that preparing can be inclusive to those other family members, those congregations, the coworkers or whatever, because you're shooting the bow and you're going on a hike and you're going camping and you're going scouting. And this is all part of the hunting consumptive use side of things. When I was able to tell some of those young men and women about that, they're like, I never really thought about that, because I always looked at it as my opportunity to go out and enjoy the outdoors. But my uncle always kind of wanted to know what I did. Well, I could go show him and didn't have to take him hunting. Show him through a spot and scope because your buddy drew a bighorn sheep tag or a goat tag, or you're going to go turn around and look for elk wallows and scrapes and stuff, or whatever. There's an opportunity to have that constant message and education that we just don't take a very good opportunity for it,
right.
because we're doing it in that circle. We're doing it in our groups. When I went out to the Wild Sheep Foundation a couple weeks ago, and the amount of people that came to me because of what we did over the course of the last year that never lion hunted, could give a rat's ass less about lion hunting, but they were so grateful for what we did because they saw that everybody else in every other state that they were working with, it affected them. It was somebody that they knew, somebody that had a beagle for rabbits, or somebody that had, a Springer Spaniel for pheasants, or somebody that had a coyote decoy dog, or a hound for lions and bobcats, or whatever. We helped create a conduit for them to be able to interact with their people that they knew, and it provided significant buy-in. And I think that that's part of the overall success of what we did. We just didn't kick the crap out of them on 127. We built a tool, a roadmap, and a playbook that can be retooled and reutilized and adapted and modified as necessary. And I got to reemphasize, you guys and many others were part of that conversation to make that happen. Because if you don't have willing people and willing events and willing chapters and willing organizations, it falls on deaf ears.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a rough one, man. That's what the conversation we had was the older gentleman that was at the range I was shooting, and I was talking to him about 127, and he goes, I don't mountain lion hunt, doesn't matter. That's the one I was thinking of that I called you on. And it's like, well, yeah, this matters. This is why it matters, right? As soon as they're able to use that trophy hunting verbiage, that's precedence, right? And like you said, right, trophy hunting elk, trophy hunting mule deer. I don't know if you saw Mike Castillo. I'm going to drop that episode in here like a week or so, but Mike has this, what he calls a generational paradigm shift in the definition of trophy hunting, right? Where that is, he wants it to be seen, and I never thought about it till he said it. He wants that to be seen as, the utmost in stewardship, right? I'm taking this old, and I'm doing a very bad job of paraphrasing him. But that is the ultimate steward of the landscape.
Well, Jason Matzinger did this was a selective for wild sheep. For Boone and Crockett, and that was the same thing. It's being selective. It's challenging yourself to be able to harvest or acquire the largest of one's kind, and those type of people typically are willing to sacrifice the harvest because they weren't successful on their endeavor to be able to turn around and get the biggest, baddest, meanest son of a gun that was there.
Right. That
goes into that. I mean, we should all be proud to be trophy hunters, but we have to redefine trophy hunting in the sense to where it doesn't get bastardized, and then they marginalize what we actually do. And that paradigm shift that you're talking about, I think, is valuable. We just got to figure out how to make sure that you're on same point in message as I am, and the bow hunter in Alabama is, and the hound hunter in Michigan is, because there's so many different interpretations that if we don't stay lockstep,
then we're in trouble.
Then we're in trouble.
Well, what's funny about that you say that, so I shared that clip, and someone commented on there and said, well, this is what's hurting us, folks that just want to fill the freezer. And it's like we can't even agree on the definition,
right? Because
we allowed them to define what that is for us, right? And that bastardization of it. But we got to say that this is actually what it is, right? And send that message loud and clear. But yeah, it was interesting to hear you say that and think that guy commented on it, and it's like, We don't even know what it is.
No, and the antis can't define it either.
No.
And now that they've...
It's a trigger, though. It's a really good trigger.
Is. And now that they've marginalized the conservation side of it, because now they become conservationists.
Yeah.
They're all conservationists. Every single organization out there from that side is a conservationist. I'd like, what the hell do you do for conservation?
Right. Zero.
I mean, I've not seen any of your money, any of your names, any of your effort, any of your boots on the ground work for conservation. Yeah, you're out there doing recreation, and you might do some consumptive use activities. But what do you do for conservation?
I mean, really, where is their consumptive use? Where is their input to the landscape?
Well, their consumptive use is just being able to turn around and walk and grind their gravel down below their feet, and then turn around and poop behind a bush. And you know what? We are all consumptive in some capacity, whether we take something off the land or not. It's just that the non-consumptive users that coin themselves as conservationists,
it's crazy.
They leave more than what they turn around and take, and what they leave is not very good for the environment and the landscape.
Well, I don't see them. We got what did we start this year? We got to take our poop off the mountain deal.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, where did they start that? Like, where did that start from? You know, and it's just, I don't know. Maybe that's maybe that's just me stretching it. But at the same time, it's like, you know, where's your concern, right? I don't see their concern in anything outside of their ideologies about hunting, protecting mountain lions, putting wolves on the landscape, and this is my foil hat, right? And I wear a pretty big foil hat, and it glows at time to time. But I don't think it has anything to do with the animals. I think it's anti-hunter sentiment through and through. And maybe some of those people do want to protect the animals, but ultimately it's about ending hunting is how I see it, right? I have never, in my experience, since I have tried to be an activist, right, make a difference, I have never seen anything that they have done that tells me that they care about anything but doing away with hunting. They would be fine with no deer, no elk, no nothing on the landscape. If the hunting doesn't exist, they're happy, and they think, you know, we can encroach and we can build and we can reroute and redirect, kill winter ranges, and the animals will figure it out. We can be laissez-faire, and the ecosystem is going to thrive. And it's just like, come on, you guys are, I don't even want to insult them. I hate insulting them because you're idiots.
Well, and I've been on enough boards and committees over the years, and I've had deep, dark conversations and sometimes arguments and altercations to the point where people say, well, look at all this space. Well, just because you have open space doesn't mean it's wildlife habitat. Right. Because if there's no wildlife there, there's no wildlife habitat. You might have space, and when they start to look at it, well, and Sean's taken me on a few different places that we can go shoot some video clips and some different things, and everybody's got dogs, and everybody's running and jogging, and everybody's got headphones on, and everybody's making noise going up and down the trail. We would see stuff at a distance, way, way far, like across the highway, across the mountain, or whatever. But you very seldom ever saw it right there. Because it was people space. It wasn't wildlife space. The wildlife might go there after hours and stuff, but it's not wildlife space. I want to make sure that people fully understand the difference between the urban-rural wildlife divide, just like what we do urban-rural human divide. Because just because you got wildlife in open space, or you got wildlife in a corridor of a non-hunting area in a municipality, township, or county, or whatever, is that the wildlife that we want to go? Is that what we really want to deal with? Because I live in Canyon City. You could drive through Canyon City all day long and see deer in everybody's yard. That's not really wildlife habitat. And even CPW doesn't consider that to be part of the population base because it's not a huntable population. I think explaining to the general public about the need of conservation, legitimate boots-on-the-ground conservation from game agencies that hunters and anglers provide the funding to, is a component that it will provide, to your point, the paradigm shift of trophy hunting down the road to where people can differentiate between the food side of it, the selectivity side of it, the mature harvest side of it, to where people understand why individuals do what they do. And if you really want to get to the nut cutting on stuff, the people that harvest for meat, their success rate is much higher than the people that harvest for the selective large scale stuff, the mature animal. It's still low compared to going to grocery stores. You can go to the grocery store and pretty much pick out whatever you want. You go to the field, you don't get a chance to do that. The majority of the young people that you dealt with, and some of the older ones, and I don't see a lot of older ones doing these pack them out challenges.
It increased last year.
Did it?
Yeah. Oh, it definitely.
It ain't going to be me. I'll tell you that. I'll come and support it, but I'm not going to get in it.
I think the oldest gentleman was 63 or 64.
Okay, just go ahead and age me now.
Yeah,
go ahead.
He did pretty good, man. I mean, it's not.
So you're saying I got 2 years left?
Yeah. That might help because my white hair might bring some of those guys in there. But yeah, is definitely an all-comer thing, right? It's nice to test yourself and your ability, but I digress on that. Talking about the pack out challenge, I lost my train of thought because you said something really good, and then it just went out.
If we utilize the value of what the young people can bring to the table for education, engagement, and the value that they have, I mean, why are we doing what we're doing? Well, we're doing it for us now, but we really care about the wildlife and we care about the young people behind us. Mm-hmm. And if you can provide value to that young person, and that young person decides to provide value for themselves, we just help bridge a gap that we've had for quite some time. Because you said earlier in the conversation, a lot of hunters, a lot of sportsmen are loners. I mean, they just soon do it by themselves. They might like the family group to go out on hunting, but they're loners. If you have more and more loners, you have more divisiveness between the rank and file, from the 18-year-old to the 63-year-old, because there's no interaction. There's no reason to continue to prop that up. I think what we created here and what we saw from around the country to support what we do here, and that they're willing to support other states and for other reasons, actually is a maybe it's not the silver bullet. Maybe it's not the matrix, but I think it is a piece of the puzzle that's been missing for so long.
Oh, absolutely.
And you guys have helped provide that through the Pack 'em Out Challenge. How long have you been doing that now?
I think this is year 4 that we're going into this year.
And it's grown exponentially.
It's grown. I mean, it's not, it's business. It's never as fast as you want it, but yeah, it's grown. And I mean, one of our biggest deals with that is not to lose sight of why we started it, right? Why it came to fruition was to provide education and bring like-minded people together. I mean, that's one of the best things about a 3D archery shoot or a LR shoot, is that you're with like-minded individuals, right? It's people that you can embrace, and I think part of that comes from the struggle of it, right? Mm-hmm. What we do is not easy. So I think there's this respect and admiration that's given right off the bat, right? You can go, like, for me, man, I'm like a little kid with this Western, Conservation Expo here this week in Salt Lake. I'm like a kid at Christmas, dude. I walk in those halls and I know that the 10,000 or 20,000 people that I'm about to brush shoulders with, they all partake in something that I love immensely. That's part of me. There's this relationship there, and I don't even need to know you. You know what I mean? And I have never found anything like that. I mean, I've done everything. I've ridden motorcycles on the dirt, on the track, snowboard for umpteen years, fish, free dive, scuba dive,
surf,
boat. I sucked at surfing.
I was going to say, you just didn't look like the Spicoli type of guy here.
I can bodyboard with the best of them. But with all the stuff that I have tried in my life, I have never found anything like hunting. When you look at another hunter, you know that he understands the struggle. You know the level of respect that he has for life, right? And not just sentient life, but life on the landscape. I would go ride a motorcycle before I started hunting. Man, I'd rip through a field. I'd rip over landscape and never give it a second thought. And when I started hunting, it just reeled in.
You start cussing the motorcyclist that you saw.
Yeah, because you don't have that respect for the entire ecosystem, right? You're not there partaking. And I really think that if we look at that as hunters and say, man, I embrace this entire process and what this entire process means, I think it just gives us a greater appreciation for everything around us. But then the people part of it, right, is, like I'm saying, you have this respect, and I think that's where that generational gap between that 24-year-old and that 65-year-old is kind of broken down way easier, because if that 24-year-old has got his butt kicked for a couple seasons and he can go get some words of wisdom from this, old salty dog that's been doing it for 50 years, right? There's going to be something he can gain something. He knows that man has already done what I'm doing, and you know what I mean? There's just this I don't know, man. I start to get all philosophical or sentimental when it comes to hunting, but I feel like we all have a connection because we decided to partake in the circle of life, right? Deeper than running and getting cellophane off the shelf. And I think that is what we need to embrace and figure out how we come full circle. How do I serve that 65-year-old hunter as a 24-year-old hunter, right? And how, as a 65-year-old hunter who's on his maybe last few years of hunting, especially off his boots, right? How do I serve that 24-year-old hunter? And I think if we can just look at that, right? Just look at that and say, or even just that thought, right? It brings everything full circle, and I think we're stronger for it as a demographic.
Well, I think some of that, honestly, comes from, and we've capitalized it to some degree. I think we've lost some ground, but we capitalized on it because of COVID. And if you look at the hunter-gatherer mentality of how we've evolved into this component of modern-day contemporary, sportsmen and women, COVID brought a lot of people out of the woodworks, nationwide, to be able to turn around and say, I want to be able to supply for myself. And also, they were wearing masks everywhere, so they couldn't go anywhere except for outside. And so there's a learning curve that those people saw value. I don't think it's just, there again, I could talk about silver bullet, the secret message, but to turn around and run a ballot initiative post-COVID and talk about people's ignorance and their inability to make the right decision when it comes to wildlife management side of things, I think that our opposition found maybe something in the closet that they weren't fully aware of, because there was a hell of a lot more people that bought hunting licenses and fishing licenses and went through hunter education and did stuff outside. Now, maybe they didn't continue it, but they understood it a little bit. They became educated on it. They engaged in it. Maybe they weren't successful, but maybe their buddy was, and then they turn around and shared the food and they shared the stories and the pack 'em out side of things. I think that all of that stuff went on our favor because 2020, the wolves were voted on, but we were going through this component of COVID. 21 and 22, we were still having COVID. Anybody that bought licenses in 20, 21, 22, and 23, they became educated from the hunting side of it much more than what they had previously. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, I think the statistics were, and I know this just because of my existence on the Wildlife Council, but the license applications were up by 150,000 or more. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but in a state of 5.9 million people, where you've got 1 million people that do something, you increased your rank and file acknowledgement and participation by 15%. I think that was not taken into consideration by the antis, and I don't think they can change that, because that, even if only 7.5, well, even if only 50% of the 15% turn around and engaged and continue to, well, that's 75,000 people more than what we had before.
Yeah, and it's nice that people saw the necessity for that lifestyle, for those skill sets, right? And I almost think, listening to you say it, it's almost a very American thing. Like, oh wait, you're taking this, you're not taking this from me.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, and I think that's what we need to get back to.
Yeah.
Right. Red-blooded Americans. Right. You can't take this from me. You're not going to take it from me. I'm fighting for this, and I think we'll be way better off for it. But yeah, I think them seeing the necessity of having those skill sets, and maybe they set back, but maybe it's a family thing. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have the time. Maybe I don't have the money to partake, but I know it's there. I would imagine that some of those people maybe trickle back into it if we lost a percentage of them.
Well, and I think it became more acceptant to what they've seen their uncles do or their grandpas do or their dads do that they never engaged in, but then they saw value to it. Not only they saw value from the human dimension side of spending time with the family, but also being able to supply food for yourself if you're so successful, or you follow somebody around and ride their coattails who is successful.
Right.
But it gave you a sense of independence, and the government's not telling me what I can or can't do. I get to go do this on my own. And if I'm not good at elk, maybe I'm good at turkey. Maybe I want to turn around and go pheasant hunting. Maybe I just want to fish. There was so much there that was opening the door for opportunity that a lot of those people didn't engage in previously. They knew it was there, but they had other things that were more important to your surfing or your water, your bodyboarding.
And
or
I'll
whatever.
tell you what, that mess kicked my butt. My daughter can surf her butt off, but yeah, not me, son.
So what do you like to do for hunting?
That's always dude. I'm elk through and through. Like,
but not just bow.
I'll shoot. Look, if it's bolo season, I'm out there spinning that sucker. I could care less, dude. Boomerang season, bolo season. I don't care. I just want to be on the landscape, experiencing that circle of life, learning, growing, spending time with my creator. I'm a better person. So you talked about, not folks don't get out for 30 days. I get out for 30 days.
Yeah.
September is my month. I'm on the mountain the entire month. Last year I come down probably more frequently because I was missing mama. But that's my month, right? And I go on the mountain and I come off a better person every time, right? I leave my crap. I talk to my creator. I experience those animals. I get my butt kicked. And I love functioning in hard work and humility for success, right? Like that is where it is. I'm just a better person for being on the landscape, right? So I sometimes, maybe too hard, I seek that out by that next ridge. And I walk by more animals than I need to. But man, elk just do it for me in every way, shape, or form. The social aspect of them. How can a critter be 700 pounds and be that elusive, right? It just, their evolution.
With antlers that big and get through the timber that you got to walk over and crawl under.
It just doesn't make sense, and their evolution from our encroachment is, if you look at, their success as a species and their adaptation in the last couple hundred years with our, expanse through North America and how that animal adapted. If you look at it, adaptation across species, this is thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And this animal went from, generally speaking, a plains animal to what we know now as a mountain animal, right? It's just remarkable, their adaptability and the speed and adaptation. There's a really good book, if folks are listening, The Elk of North America, and there is some accounts in that book. You're talking Florida Panhandle up to upstate New York, just across the Americas with elk, and it's remarkable. And you get in that book and you start to understand how fast they adapted to us. It's just remarkable. Now the unfortunate part is we've essentially killed most of those herds off, right? But it's just phenomenal, and all the subspecies and stuff you could learn about in that book. I really enjoyed it, but
looks like a good book.
It's just an amazing critter.
Does it get into the hunting side of it? Does it?
Absolutely. It talks history, talks hunting. You got journal accounts of guys out hunting them where they, a year before there was 1,000 elk, and this year there's only 3 elk, and it's just an amazing read. And I don't think most people realize that it was that elk are generally were considered a plains animal. We look at
and across the North American continent.
There's if you could pull that map up in there, I don't know if it's not going to give you. See if you go to read the sample and see if there is maybe a map in there. Nope, they're just going to give you the cover. Oh, that sucks. But there's a couple of maps, and it shows their range, and that's where
historic range.
Their historic range, and that's where I really had the realization of this animal. The subspecies we know versus the subspecies that are in this historical account. Dang it, it's not in there.
No.
I'll send you the map off of my copy. But it's just phenomenal, man. It's remarkable, and it's just a fun animal to chase. They frustrate the living bejesus out of me, and I'm one of those trophy selective guys when it comes to elk.
How long did it take you? Because how long have you been hunting elk?
2018 was my first elk hunt.
How many elk have you harvested?
2.
So you're in the upper percentile as far as total success rate.
And I'm going to caveat that by saying I won't shoot a raghorn. A raghorn to me is a small 5. Sometimes I use that as a crutch and as an excuse. But I really, my first bull was in Wyoming in 2018, and it's always been wanting to upgrade the class of animal, and I really, that herd bull type mentality has really owned my pursuit with elk. It's just phenomenal, man. You can get, some of those rags will come in and you didn't do much.
Yeah.
Right. I called a little bit. They're curious animals. They're hot to trot, for that time of the year. And it's just not how I saw the pursuit for myself, and I've done well upholding the goal that I've set. Right, you can't kill the monarch if you kill the raghorn on the third, fourth, 10th day. And sometimes it's frustrating, to set in and say, man, what am I doing? I could just settle, and then I'll talk to Mama and she'll be like, if you settle, you'll just be upset with yourself. And that's the truth.
See, and I, on the other hand, I've harvested a lot of elk. Of course, I'm older than you, but I've harvested 38 bull elk. But there's a bunch of spikes and raghorns in there. But when I was guiding hunts, you had 1 or 2 days, and when we could harvest spikes, that was the first thing, because it was meat, it was filling the freezer.
Yep.
But then you got into some raghorn opportunities, and then when we went into the 4-point restriction in the state, then other opportunities came about. And I've harvested some nice elk. There's a lot of elk that I shouldn't have harvested where I harvested them because I was by myself.
Right. That's the hard part.
Yeah. It's like I could use one of these, but I don't know if I really want to or not.
Was that my 23 season? There was a monster of a bull in my area, and struggled to get him in. This dude was just the quintessential monarch of the mountain, and got my butt kicked. Had to go to New Mexico to guide. Came back home. Went in, got into him, 200 yards for him. He's hot and rearing and ready, and I'm like, where am I? Like the realization of you're way too far back here, right? And I sat there, in turmoil for a good 30 minutes going, I want to kill this bull, but what am I going to do? I'm back here, literal backcountry, nasty old drainage, right? And I had to, and I think part of me, I kind of punked out a little bit, but it was, the concern was, okay, I can get this bull down. It's going to take me 3 days, bare minimum, to get out of here with this bull, right? And I had to acquiesce to what I felt at the time was common sense. There's a little regret in it now. I even got on my daggum Garmin and messaged a couple guys like, dude, are you free to come help me pack this thing out? Sorry, man, the wife will kill me if I leave. I just got back, and it was just like, dang it. Sat there and I just had to walk away from them. But I think that's part of the beauty of what we do, right? There's no reason for me to go in there and kill an animal if I'm going to waste a scrap of meat, right? And I'm not all the time take the bones for the bone marrow and, guy. Right. I'll do it, but it's not something that I endeavor to do. I don't want to waste an ounce of meat. Like, I take rib meat. I'm going to scrape it to where I could pick that carcass up with my bare hands, move it wherever I want to move it. It's stripped that good. And I think that's, at least in my head, for me, right? And I don't want anybody to take it as a negative connotation, if you don't do it like that. But that's where I'm at with it. And if I can't ensure that meat is all coming out on my back, I'm just not going to do it. And I freaking hate that decision as we talk. Knowing that bull, man. It was funny because I was sitting, I got a little knob that I can glass that side from. And it's hard to really, you're talking about a mile and a half, just over a mile and a half on the glass. And I saw what I believe was him last year too. And I looked at the area and I'm like, good on you. It's like I can't do it. And most of my hunting is solo. That's how I choose to partake. And there's just something about that experience, man. And I don't know. It's an amazing thing to go out there and say, I'm going to do this on my terms, the way I want to do it, and hold to that. At least for me, has offered me some, even at my ripe old age, has offered me a lot of lesson in life, right? That's the one thing I appreciated about it, is you can go out there and chase those animals and they'll beat you up, and you sit back and look at it and go, okay, you're going to teach me some more. I'm going to sit here willing to learn this lesson. And I use mule deer to fill the freezer, so I don't really. And then I got that 4th season cow tag, which is always that's always a great tag.
You've hunted 4 years or 6 years for elk.
Yep.
How many states?
1, 2, 3 states. Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico.
Where do you like hunting the best?
Here at home.
Yeah. Colorado.
I mean, I enjoy, like, Wyoming is beautiful. There's nothing quite like Wyoming in terms of abundance and beautiful landscape. It's a little bit difficult to navigate. I don't like grizzly bears. And I like solo. So, getting in some of those wilderness areas in Wyoming. New Mexico is what New Mexico is. I don't necessarily want to spend the finance it takes to go hunt in New Mexico. One of the reasons I moved to Colorado, I've been coming here for years to hunt elk. I love it. I love the landscape. The terrain, is some of the most challenging terrain. I got Joe Gillia, Elk Bros, tells me all the time, bro, you got to stop hunting that crazy country you hunt. Right? Because it's like steep and deep, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be super backcountry or anything like that, but steep and deep, it's just, that's how I see me pursuing those critters. And there's nothing better than a $40 tag.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We got the biggest, right now, the biggest, knock on wood, the biggest elk population in the country. I can go do that literally in my backyard, and just enjoy it and, hop, skip it.
And you're in steep and deep country over there.
Oh, dude, we literally are at the toe of the house, backs up to the toe of the slope for the flat tops. And I mean, everything about that country says you shouldn't be walking in it. And there's some areas that are, fairly easy to access, right? And you get on some of them ridges and run the ridges, but it's like, what pursuit do you want? Do you want to drive the roads? Go for it. If you want to tackle BLM, go tackle BLM. If you want to get into that nasty, steep, deep country and, break yourself off and consider what you did when you drop into the bottom of the drainage and the 80-foot tree on top looks like it's 3 inches tall, it's your pursuit. It's however you dream that pursuit up. And I don't know. It's just something about that animal and chasing them, man. You can, like, no dream is too big. Now, you may not, they may dice and dash your dreams. But there's no dream too big or too small, man, to get out there and just experience that and, be humbled. And you know how it is. You're out on the mountain and you're the small, we are an arrogant, mother-loving species, right? We think we own everything. We're the most important thing at any given moment.
And we're always correct.
We're always right. You know what I mean? And you put yourself out in God's creation like that, and you realize how minuscule everything is. You, your problems, your worries.
It's interesting, too, that people that have never done it, when you're camping, it gives you some of that. When you're hiking, it gives you some of that. But when you're in pursuit of your quarry in an attempt to harvest, or at least take the opportunity to harvest, it puts you in a different mindset to where the cell phone disappears, work disappears, the emails disappear, and it becomes a little bit, I'll get that. I'll get to that tomorrow. I'll do that later. Now, when I drew a sheep tag in the Sandgrays 2 years ago, I'd hunted that place extensively, and to make a long story short, I didn't kill anything, but I passed up a couple rams. I decided I didn't want one because I had harvested one back in 2000, and there was nothing, to your point, any bigger. So I selectively opted not to harvest. But I used the cell phone because of the Onyx Hunt side of it, and because I had signal for the satellite. Well, the damn emails and the text messages would come up. And so I've gotten to the point now to where I'll utilize the Garmin or another GPS device or something, so I don't have to worry about the emails and the text messages. You don't have to pay attention to it, but it's harder to separate yourself when it's there in front of you and you've got signal. When you're out in the field and you're pursuing something, it's just hard to explain to people of how that takes you back. And it is different than trying to get to the next ridge to set a camp up, because you're trying to get to the next ridge to set a camp up for a reason,
right? As
opposed to just picking a spot aimlessly.
Yeah, it's easy to stay on groomed trails and the road when you're camping, right? Yeah. And I grew up, I didn't grow up hunting, but I grew up camping and fishing, and I never, you don't experience that way. I remember sitting on my Uncle Wayne's boat. We're at Lake Cachuma up in Santa Ynez, and we would go out in the morning and we would just slaughter bluegill, man. I mean, slaughter them. And I remember seeing pigs and deer on the side, and I would literally, and fishing I still love to fish. And I remember looking at those pigs and elk and deer, and there was something that just, intrigued me about that, way back when. And that's kind of what got me going into it, right, is remembering that stuff and looking back on it. But I can't remember a point where I ever learned myself or learned a lesson camping or fishing, you know what I mean? And just escaped everything like we're able to do when we're out pursuing these critters.
So the people that are participating in the Pack-A-Mount Challenge that you guys do, because it's a competition, do you think that has changed perspectives at all when it comes to hunting itself is a competition? Because there's a lot of that competition side out there that mine's bigger than yours. Well, we've dealt with that stuff all of our lives. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's is there a level of I'm better than you're better when it gets to that? Or
so that was a very interesting thing to see at Western HuntFest. Folks are not there. We set the competition up by the RFID timers, okay? Their competition has been themselves. Can I do better than last year? Can I carry this full elk out? And so folks that are listening, so the Pack Out Challenge for the men's division, it's either team or solo, and you have to pack basically a simulated full bull elk out. For the women's division, teams or solo, it's a full mule deer. So we stimulate with sandbags. So folks understand courses vary based on the venue we're at and the terrain, but anywhere from 3/4 of a mile to about 1.5 miles on the easier, flatter terrain. And what we did is we wanted to prepare people so they're not going into the back country, the front country, shooting an animal, and then again,
what the hell?
Wasting the meat, not understanding how the pack works, not understanding how to load the meat. Because what's going to happen is a guy or gal's going to get out there, say they're solo, and they're going to, get that animal down. It's going to take somebody a couple hours, to take care of the elk, get it processed, ready to pack out. You're going to pack out. If you're 2-3 miles in, that's 6 mile round trip.
Yeah.
I got two pack outs done. I'm beat. It's 68, 72, 74. I don't have a ton of canopy. I've spoiled that meat. We do not want the animals that are killed on the landscape to be wasted. We want them harvested for sustenance. And that was the thought, right? Can you perform this? And the competition aspect of it was for the pressure to perform your best. So when folks come out to a shoot, not even just with the Pack Out Challenge, but with the hunt-specific task on the shot, right? You can go to another 3D archery event, and you stand at a pin, you're square-legged, and you shoot. There's no elevated heart rate. Your respirations aren't going crazy. You don't have the pressure of people, looking at you. So we added, you shoot from your knees, or you have to rifle crawl, and draw your bow, let your bow down, hold for 30 seconds, and then release. So hunt-based scenarios just to increase the pressure so you learn yourself. The scoring and all that, we want people to come out and be competitive because Jeffrey, Efren, and myself, we're competitive dudes, right?
I could tell that.
But we want you to be better. And the only place that you can really find it is through competition. You're not going to feel the level of pressure at a regular shoot. I'm sorry. You're just not going to do it. No offense to the other shoots. You're not going to feel the level of pressure unless you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And for a lot of people, you get out there and you get, buck fever, bull fever. That's great. You could work through that. But try and shoot from your knees or, get low, lean forward off your knees to shoot under that branch because you got that, one small window of opportunity for your season. You start to couple all those aspects of that shoot on top of it, and it's just about education and betterment of self. We threw the competition part of it because we want to reward the people that are clearly coming out and upping their game in every aspect. So with the elk calling competition, with the Pack Out Challenge, with the Sprint Challenge, with the course scores, up your game. And we've consistently seen the folks that are attending our events come out, perform, then outperform themselves at the next event to get to the championship, and then to take the championship home. I mean, last year we had Kim Adams. She's been hunting since 2015, 2016, and worked her butt off in every aspect. And she took the championship last year in the women's division because of the work she put in.
And there's cash prizes and
yeah, last year we did $7,000 of cash, and then probably another $2,000 to $3,000 in just packs and shelters and broadheads and arrows and stuff like that. Just to kind of reward, that level of effort. And then to see it play out in the folks that participate in their seasons and their success, and not taking any credit for it, right? We're not saying that, we did that. But their success in season after HuntFest season was phenomenal, and it was and it's grown over the last few years where it's like, wow, they're sending us pictures. Thanks,
so
guys.
You're helping to create qualified harvesters.
Essentially, I wouldn't say creation, right? We're providing them.
You're facilitating.
We're facilitating, right? We're providing a venue to where they can grow their skill sets and hone in on those skill sets prior to season. In every facet.
And that's Western HuntFest.
Yes.
Pop that up, please. And so you're doing 3 of those this year.
We have 3 this year. We have Raton, New Mexico, Colorado Springs, and then Bailey, Colorado.
Bailey's the championship?
Bailey is just a regular event this year.
Okay.
So, with us being kind of a newer shoot, we're just testing. Essentially, we're testing our marketplace, right, and understanding what people want to see, and what we can provide offers the best benefit.
We need to add outdoorsman days to that in some capacity, to where you can come down there and be a part of it.
Absolutely. That was a blast last year, man. We were talking. Jeff and I were kind of coordinating some events for this year, and I was like, we got to get with Dan on the chuck wagon thing. That chuck wagon dinner at Outdoorsman Days, man,
it was cool, wasn't it?
That was so good.
Yeah, and we got good commitments so far this year from some other speakers and sponsors and stuff. But there again, being able to provide this stuff with each other, that's a cool video there. That was at Fort Carson or the Cheyenne Mountain, wasn't it?
That one there, no, that was at Raton at the NRA Whittington Center. And actually, at that event this year on Sunday, we're going to have a rifle course that we've added to the event. Right? The vision is not to be bow specific, right? We want to play into whatever we can that makes someone better. So we got with the NRA Whittington Center, and their folks there are going to set up some steel targets, and we're going to mimic some hunt scenarios on a rifle course and add that into the event. And ultimately, we like to see the event grow through, more than just archery as a discipline.
Well, that's cool.
There's a ton of folks that, are great archers that partake in rifle. And then there's folks that are just archers. There's folks that are just rifle. So we want to serve the community at large.
You've got kids divisions too?
We have kid pins. We haven't, that'll happen as we grow, where we're adding on, kid division to where it's an actual competition with prizes and things like that. We do a ton of giveaways, man. I don't even know how much stuff we give away through our sponsors and vendors at the shoots. And we definitely love to cater to the youth. We have our regular course with pins set up. Allie is on here. She, right now for the 24 season, she has the largest archery kill, 187-inch dry, 6-month dry score for the state of Colorado. She worked her butt off last year, did the pack out challenge, did some of the 3D shooting, and went out there and killed a stud. Let me see if I got her picture up on here. A stud of a mule deer. You know what? Here, pull it up on here. Go to Pack 'em Out Apparel Instagram, and Allie's on there. So Ephraim, one of my partners, is his daughter, and she said, I'm gonna do this year, and she worked her little butt off, man. That's Ephraim's bull from this year.
I saw that.
Oh, there she is. So right here.
Oh, look at that.
Right here in the right.
Go down one there.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's badass.
In velvet.
That was 187.
Yeah. That is amazing. But
she's not the typical competitor, and she's not the typical sportswoman. She's a young lady that turned around, but she's into this stuff and just found her niche.
I mean, some of it is family bred, right? I mean, her father is a phenomenal hunter, but he's also a phenomenal mentor. And then her uncle, that's Jeff, that's my other partner there. He shot a stud of a antelope this year. So she definitely has an upper hand in terms of the mentorship and everything. But what stood out to me is that she endeavored to do it. She knew through hard work that she could achieve her goal if she set into it, man. And she started it last year, and she told I'm going for this. This is what I want to do, and I'm going to do everything I need to do to get it done. And that's exactly what she did. And that, to me, is the best example of what Western HuntFest is, right? Is that you can work at something and see that through fruition.
Yeah, look at that. And the reason I say that, go to the language there, the verbiage, that one slide. You guys, the Western Hunt and Pack 'em Out Apparel, they supported all the efforts of what we were doing on 127. They supported the efforts because of that young lady. They supported the efforts because of the challenge that you guys have created. Mm-hmm. And it goes back into all the conversations of this. That's a cool deal, because that still shows that you guys are supporting. You just don't talk about it.
No.
It's everything that you guys do and live for.
Well, it's so visible, right? I could feed you a line of BS and you wouldn't know none of the wiser, right? And it's like, oh, well, you're going to talk the talk or you're going to walk the walk.
Yeah.
Right? My yard signs through September, through second rifle, through fourth rifle, I put a yard sign. If I set a camp, I had a yard sign outside of camp.
We saw those
on the road, right? And it was like, look, I had a couple folks come up and, woohoo. And it's like, yeah, where's yours, buddy?
Yeah.
And it's that important, right? Again, it's part of me. It's part of Ephraim. It's part of Jeff. It's who we are. I don't think that there's any stopping it. I don't think that we can set back even for a moment and think we're safe because of one victory, right? And I think if we take that attitude, we're going to find out the hard way.
One prime example is you get a young lady like that is out. She harvests that. She learns the ethics, the morals, the conservation side of it. And it goes into why you need to sustain what we have in perpetuity, whether it's a mountain lion or a deer or a pheasant or a duck or anything else. And I think that sort of stuff there provides an answer to people that say, I don't lion hunt. Well, what's it going to be next time? I don't bow hunt,
right?
Or I don't pheasant hunt
anymore.
Yeah, anymore, exactly.
Right.
And it's cool to be able to see that there's that much emphasis on the totality of what you guys are doing. When you guys came to Outdoorsman Days last year and we did the wild game contest, the calling contest, and when I threw it to you what we wanted to do, and it was predators, waterfowl, turkeys, elk, whatever. There was some people that got up and couldn't do any of it.
Right.
Other ones could do some of it. There was a couple of them that could do all of it. But that goes into the overall side of the sportsman end of it. If you want to have a calling contest and you're going to do elk, that's great. But throw somebody a curveball and see if they're actually really a sportsman or they're just an elk hunter or they're a duck hunter or they're an elk hunter. And I think that those things made it fun because a lot of the people that came didn't expect to see any of it, let alone be able to participate in it.
The one dude, remember the one guy, the big tall guy? I think he ultimately won. His duck calling.
Yeah.
And to talk to him about his story, he goes, man, I've never done a competition. I just started duck calling about a year ago, but I would go down to the riverbank by the house and I would just listen to the ducks and mimic and mimic.
He was
badass.
Mimic.
That dude, when he told me that, I was like, man, how long have you been calling? He says, about a year.
And for those that weren't there, the choice of what you could do is a variety of different things or a little bit of any of it. And he concentrated on the waterfowl stuff, and he was really, really good
He was really good at it. I mean, even like just the way he got into it.
He was animated. He looked like a Hopi Kachina doll dancer out there.
Oh, it was amazing. It excited me, and I'm not a waterfowl guy, right? Like, I got excited for waterfowl.
The audience was all geared into him. They're like, I hope he gets to the next round because I want to see him again.
Yeah, and what was the one guy? Because the one guy ended up, he him and a buddy, he was a caller on Hunt Wars. I think he came in second. I forget the gentleman's name. And that dude, he was a hell of an elk caller.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see, and I really appreciated just throwing everything in there, right? So we're not segmenting our skill sets, right? And we're bringing that together and showing appreciation for all of it. But you try and judge a duck caller versus a predator caller versus a elk caller in one setting. Man, I look back at the judges and they're looking at me and they're going, "Really, dude? Like, I did not expect that." You know, he goes, "I thought he had it licked." Because I had one of the judges was Jermaine Hodge, and Jermaine goes, "Man, and it was nice because Jermaine, I mean, he's an elk guy, right? But the guy started out in waterfowl, right? So he understood it. He's like, whoo, this is a rough one." And it was such a really cool dynamic to see that. But that level of camaraderie that we saw through that, I think is something that we need to emphasize on, right? It goes to what we were talking about earlier. Between trapping and the hound guys and, the bow hunters and whatnot, right? I mean, we'll yell at each other for what camo we select and whether or not we shoot a 6.5 Creedmoor. But when it's time to come together, I think, that's what we've seen of late is it's time to come together, right? Put all the differences aside and all the bickering. And that was the cool
thing about that calling part of it, because it emphasized the camaraderie that we were building on 127, and to make sure that everybody knew that they were part of the equation.
That's right.
It wasn't singular, because when I went around and started telling people about the calling contest, they're like, "Well, I don't really do that." I said, "You don't have to. It's any of this. You don't have to specialize in any of it. Or all of it. You just have to be able to be willing to participate." And that's what we did on the messaging of 127. Maybe you're better at putting out yard signs. Maybe you're better at standing at 16th Street Mall like a couple of our guys did. Maybe you're better at turning around and doing interviews or writing op-eds. Or maybe you're better at talking to the news or whatever. Find people's personal best that they're good at, they're comfortable with, and put them to use for the cause.
Right. Absolutely.
Whether it's part of the fight, whether it's part of the avocation side of it, just put them to use for the cause.
How do we grow that though, right? If we know we got somebody that's good at educating folks, how do we get them to advocate more? How do we, you know what I mean? Like let's figure out how to increase the skill sets across the board, especially for the people that are willing to be active or the people that have the time to be more active, right? And increasing that education. So people can be more diverse in the fight. I think that'd be a big deal. I know one of the things you sent me the Sportsmen's Legislative Caucus meeting. It was a couple weeks ago now.
Got another one coming up here soon.
And the board selection process, if you will, is underway, right? And reconfirmation and whatnot. And that was pretty interesting for me to listen to and understand that, because one of the things that I scratch my head about is like, well, what alphabet agency is this? What part? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, where does that agency step on this one, and how is there overlap? And I think educating people along that is a big deal, right? But then understanding, okay, now where do we fall in terms of advocacy, and how can we grow you so we can increase an advocate at this level if you're comfortable with this one? Because I think there's people that are more than willing. It's just, lack of information, naivety on some of it.
Right.
I think that'd be a big deal to look at that and say, okay, how do we...
Comfortableness.
Right.
That was one of the biggest things that I saw. I'll do a plug here because I think it's good for your crowd. But April 24th, for instance, is Sportsman's Day at the Capitol. And we saw the people that came out last year that didn't know anything that was going on, but kind of heard a little bit about some of it. But when we got them to come to the Capitol for Sportsman's Day, even though we were in the middle of fighting Initiative 91, which eventually became 127, the amount of people that showed up that came to the Capitol and said, "I had no idea. I didn't know any of this was even going on. I feel like a flippin' idiot." Now they're almost bought into it because they know who their legislator is. They know who their representative and senator is. They know some of the legislation that maybe would affect their business that they didn't ever know about before. We brought them on board about hunting and fishing and trapping ideas and conservation, but there's things going on with employment. There's things going on with healthcare. Well, self-employed people would like to know some of that stuff because it's going to affect them, and people are acting on their behalf, whether they elected them or not. But you guys could bring some of that in to this challenge perspective, so to speak, and just say, hey, when the legislative session's going on, you could actually turn around and get 1 or 2 or 3 extra credit points for your challenge if you turn around and said you went to the legislature and you got your representative or your senator to sign off on stuff, because it's part of this entire fight. It's the advocacy, so they can go out and do that challenge and then go out and hunt after they do the challenge.
That was one of the things that I thought was cool about the whole thing. Sorry if this tangents what you were saying, but the amount of the decision makers that were flabbergasted by the number of constituents that they did not realize that they had, that were hunters, fishers, trappers. That was what really set me aside. It was just like, wow, you don't even realize who your constituents were.
Nope.
Right? And I was like, that's powerful, right? Because that decision was probably that was made. They had their mind made up, like, I'm against this. Oh, wait a minute. Look at our constituency here. Like, where did that come from?
Exactly.
I was floored, especially in a state like Colorado. California, I would expect it, right? But Colorado, for those, decision makers, if you will, to not understand that, it was a bit perplexing to me.
Yeah, you have to build the story for the people that are making the decisions, but you have to give them some ammunition, some armament for the people that they're representing. Because, as I said, whether you elect them or not, they're acting on your behalf. And if they don't know who you are, where you come from, what your perspectives are, what your interests or concerns are, why should they turn around and listen to you? Well, they can't, because they don't know who you are.
They don't even know. Right.
No. And I think this the same thing. Some of the young people that came out of the woodwork to help us out, that I would invite them to a function, and they'd say, okay, what do I need to know? Well, who's your representative and who's your senator? I don't know. I'm like, you're 29 years old. You're self-employed. If you don't know what district you live in and who these people are making decisions on your behalf, how do you expect to go there and interact with them and make an impact? Well, now every single one of them, they know who the hell, that whether they elected them or not, they know who the hell those people are. That's a growing education side of things. The difference between what we do on the animal rights side versus what we do on the sportsman, conservation, consumptive use side is we provide value to the landscape and to benefit all of Coloradans and visitors alike. Tell me, or have a legislator tell you what the animal rights industry does.
Right.
They don't do anything for the benefit of everybody. They do it for themselves, for their own groups, for their own particular interests. Now, they might argue that, but the proof is in the pudding. Belly up to the bar, create the funding mechanism, create the time and the effort to be able to do what we do, because we have it because of 125 years of success. Education through that goes to your pack 'em out challenge. It goes to the utilization of the resource. It goes to salvaging every single part that you could possibly take off the landscape. That's part of the education that I saw that you're giving a lot of these people that were participating. But they were very naive and very green and wet behind the ears when it came to what you were doing. You throw the politics into the representation side, and it really opened up a lot of eyes. A lot.
Yeah, well, that was, when we started looking at partners and things like that, right? That was a big deal for us, right? Is giving back, right? So one of our biggest things is conservation. The next would be our servicemen and women, right? So, it's like, how can we benefit that? Because we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for those folks to a point, and we sure won't be doing it, and the future won't be doing it if we don't have the conservation aspect. But having, you guys there, having Wild Sheep Foundation there, we have an event where, RMEF will be involved this year. If we could provide a space for everybody, it's better for all of us, right? Like, we'll put them all under the same roof, and everybody gets time. And I think I told you that. If that means it cuts down on how to wear a pack or an elk calling seminar, then we'll cut down that time and make sure that each one of those groups has a forum to reach our audience, right? And as we grow it, we hope that aspect of it grows, but we don't want to be run of the mill. We don't want to be another 3D archery shoot standing square at the pin and just taking dollars. No offense, just taking dollars to have patronage to grow a business. We know that it's more than that. There's a lot more on the line for us, man.
But the community has to have leaders
Absolutely.
And while CRWM led the charge on the fight, the community has to take value in its own efforts, and you guys are doing that. Charles and Mike are doing that with Hal. The big organizations are starting to come around and start to get more in the, I don't want to say the conservation, but the advocacy side, the fight side of it. You look at the connectivity, the partnerships that were created out of 127. Those are lifelong relationships that'll be created in some capacity, and so if you had, and I said this on most of our podcasts we've done, if you had the power to be king for a day, what would you want to see happen with the momentum that was created from 127 and how that would carry over for the next year or 2 or 5 years?
Oh man, that's the easy one. I want to educate the uninformed, the misinformed general public. Again, I don't want to talk in a vacuum all the time. I don't want to present this in a vacuum the whole time. I don't think we gain much ground by talking in our vacuum. If that was the case, then, the king's doctrine would be, come learn about hunting and conservation and how the North American model has benefited all of us, consumptive or non-consumptive, across, North America. I think the vacuum is very, very dangerous, right? And education is going to beat the emotion if we can get that messaging correct. So yeah, king for a day. There'd be a few other things in there, but we'll talk about those when the record button's off.
like the elk in the right spots where you didn't have to worry about steep and deep.
Nope, because that takes away from that humility, right? Is going on the mountain arrogant because I could shoot my bow 110 yards and coming off with my ass kicked, excuse the language, 28 out of 30 days. Like I wouldn't trade that for the world, man. There's nothing like going out there and realizing how small you are in the big picture. That there's in my life, there's nothing better than that. So yeah, I wouldn't trade that.
So after the Western Hunt Expo, you go where?
Western Hunt Expo, we go into our 3D season with our shoots, and then April we got Mile High Hunt and Fish, and then it's getting ready for season. Once we get through our 3D season, man, it felt, last year felt like a scramble to get ready. We go out and it's our
a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, with the expos and everything, it was like a scramble to get the bow dialed in for hunting season and off the 3D range. This year we're leaving ourselves a little more time. But yeah, we'll get into our seasons. I'll be down in New Mexico at the Elk Bros camps doing that this year. We've got a couple of really cool properties coming up, and some folks that will be out, and with that endeavor, it's kind of it's along the same lines, man. It's about education. We don't go out there and guide. We're Joe calls us coaches, so we'll go out and we are coaching a hunt, right? You have a skill set, from A to C. We're going to get you from A to P maybe this season, right? And so that'll be part of it, and then whatever tags we're lucky enough to draw. I still got to figure my tags out for this year, though. I'm not sure. You
got a bunch of choices, don't you?
It's not a bunch of choices, but I mean, if you look at just picking tags here at home and the convenience of being able to jump into the backyard versus wanting to explore new terrain.
Yeah.
And, it gets hard because we get, I don't want to say married to the landscape, but the ease of something, right? It takes me...
It's familiarity.
Yeah, it takes me an hour and 20 minutes to get from the front door to camp setup. You know what I mean? Like there's something.
You're in the backcountry.
Oh yeah. And I mean, it's beautiful. I could literally walk out my back door, hike a couple miles, and be considered backcountry. I mean, there's nothing better than that. So I'm flipping and flopping on what this year is going to look like for September.
So now, April, you've got the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo at the Gaylord, and you've got a booth set up there?
Yeah, we'll have a booth there. I think we're in row 100 for Western HuntFest, and then we'll be podcasting. So, folks listening that have a podcast, Abe and Phil had a really good idea last year, and we set up a couple podcast booths there. Reach out to me. I take care of all the coordination for the podcast going on there. Set up all the equipment, and we'll have a couple boards there, and happy to fill folks in if they don't know how to run them. But yeah, we want everybody to come in and enjoy the event, and get some content as podcasters, that's king.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody wants to reach out, and email me at guy@westerncontours.com when it comes to podcasting at Mile High Hunt and Fish in April.
Good, and we're going to be there too with CRWM, and then we're going to be doing some podcasts. Hopefully, Sean's going to come out and do some filming for us, and it's a new venture for us. But like I said, we're just trying to be able to capitalize and still run off everybody else's coattails with the generosity that they gave. But for those that haven't been to Mile High, last year was the first year.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second year, and it's turning into be a pretty good deal.
Oh, it's
cool. We've got a couple good banquets going on for conservation, and I got to thank you for what you've done for us over the course of the last 15 months. Participation, outreach, engagement, messaging, continuity, collaboration. All the cliche terms and words, and look forward to continuing to work as we do and what we need to do to help save the hunt.
No, I appreciate that, man.
And look forward to working. You coming down to Outdoorsman Days and us participating on the other events as well. I would tell people that if they have an interest in engaging in to better themselves, not just the events that you do, but the people that attend the events and what they do for some recreation, but a lot of job to make themselves bigger, better, meaner, faster, conservation-minded hunters, it's an opportunity that people should really capitalize on and take advantage of.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I agree 110%. I appreciate the accolades, man. I always feel like when I talk to you or Mike or Charles, I'm like, what can I do more of? How can I help more? I don't feel like I play a big enough role. And maybe that's by design. I don't know. But yeah, anything that I can do to help, and continue stride forward, be it on our heels or offensively, I'm all in. And I know with the other endeavors, I know that my partners are all in as well. So we absolutely appreciate everything that you guys have done, because who knows what it would have looked like until Dan Gates stepped on the scene. You got T-shirts, bro.
It was funny because the guys, I saw them at the Wild Sheep deal, and we're standing out in the hallway there, and the people that came up when I was just trying to have a conversation with your buddies, and the people that came up and with tears in their eyes and wanted autographs.
Yeah, Jeff was telling me.
And it was multiples, and he's like, dude, he says, will you come stand at our booth for a little bit and just get people to come? I'm like, you'll drive more people away. I mean, some of these people have already drank enough beer by the time they got to me, but it's cool to see that the community itself recognizes the efforts of what we did, and that was in Nevada, and I've done it in Louisiana, and I've done it in Missouri, and I'm going to Arizona, and then back to Nevada. There's an opportunity there to continue this message, but the message is for the team, the message is for the community, and the message as a whole is making sure that we all understand that as sportsmen, our job is to save the hunt.
Absolutely.
So, Guy, appreciate all your time and effort.
You.
Make sure you don't be a stranger. I know we're going to be communicating, but for more information, check out Western Contours. And you got a website or anything you want to go?
You can go Western Contours on Instagram, westerncontours.com. Podcast is on, all available platforms, Carbon TV, westernhuntfest.com, and then Western HuntFest on Instagram. Appreciate any support we can get. If you guys want to come out and just be a spectator at one of the shoots this year to understand what goes on, more than happy to walk you through the courses and educate you. Again, really good seminars and whatnot. We want participation, but more so for your benefit than ours. So I appreciate the time, humbly, and thank you greatly.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.